Your generous support makes this ministry possible. Thank you.
Want to get back to our genogram. We started drawing on a number of generations of Abram, and his wife. Let's do it properly here. Sarai, which is circle, and that's all we'll say. And what are some of the other realities that we talked about? Hagar, and how does that drawn again? Dotted line. Either way, yeah. And any other realities that go into this? Ishmael. All right, Ishmael.
It should be on the other side.
Is this just going to kill you?
Look.
Okay. What else? Big angry lines between Hagar and Sarai. All right. I like how you said that, angry lines too. All right.
Bad relationship between Isaac and Ishmael.
Mm-hmm.
The lie on
The-
and Isaac.
What did Isaac lie about? Same thing. With who? Regarding who? His wife. Exactly. That's what we mean, right? Yeah.
Do you think he even heard that story from Abram?
We don't know. We don't know. Could he have? Yeah. Could he have not? We just don't know. And again, my point is not so much that, again, it's a deterministic line, but that there's effect. That even if he didn't hear the story of that one particular instance, I think we're naive to think that that might have been the only time that it might have happened. That given when push comes to shove, Abraham lied about his wife, I think we're naive to think that might have been the only time, right? And as such, when we see it, again, we're going to get down to the next generation, and we're going to see something else, aren't we? With Jacob, who his whole life is about deceiving. And so it's a good question. I appreciate that, because we don't know for sure. Like, we don't have it recorded, and Abraham sat down with Isaac and told him how he lied about his mother. We don't have that recorded in the text, but given the influence that we see, it's a good idea that they were aware of it, most definitely. All right, so we're going from here. Rebecca, or what do we call her? People are going to look at this. And their son. And they are twins of fraternal. All right. That's supposed to say Esau.
And then the three lines, yeah.
Between who, and where, and where?
Jacob and Becky.
Jacob and Becky. How many lines?
3.
Which means?
Way too much. Yeah.
They're too close. The word we often use is enmeshed, that there's almost a blurring of distinct relationship. It's an unhealthy closeness, right?
Isaac and Esau had a good relationship, but not a freaky relationship.
No. It's the clinical term, freaky, okay, just so you know. It was actually a pretty good relationship, right? Isaac and Esau kind of got along with each other, all right?
Jacob and Esau had angry lines.
They had angry lines. Again, I love the clinical use of these relationships here. Conflict, thank you. What else? And feel free to continue on from here.
Yeah, then we have.
Well, Jacob had got married
Jacob got married.
twice.
Who's the first one?
Leah.
Yeah.
And remember the situation with that, right? Who did he think he was marrying? Surprise! You're not Rachel. Hey, what's going on here, right? So he has to do what?
Work
Another
7 years.
7 years until then he finally gets to marry Rachel. All right. Any realities in terms of the relationships here that you note?
There was a bunch of kids.
Angry lines between
Oh,
Leah and
yeah.
Rachel.
First off, right? It's hard to change the conflict to angry lines, I know, but there definitely is some conflict between these sisters.
And there was conflict kind of between Leah and Jacob too. Or there was, not, I don't know if it was conflict, but he didn't like her as much as he liked
There was definitely a little conflict here, and quite opposite. What about Jacob to Rachel?
That he loved her.
That loved her more, and the text goes out of its way to exemplify that this relationship, and this is not the cleanest way of looking at it, is actually closer than this relationship, which is understandable why there's this tension, right? If you're the wife that's not as favored by the husband, obviously you're not going to feel too good towards the wife that is favored, all right? Anything else going on here?
Leah had tons of kids and
Leah had tons of kids.
10. No, we need 2,000 kids. That's a ton.
Well, that is a ton, that's true, yeah. Okay, where do you want to start?
So Leah had 10,
10?
I believe.
it. Yeah, there was 10.
Right?
Not that many.
Oh wait, should we add a conflict line between Jacob and Isaac because he deceived him?
Wait, Leah didn't have all those kids. Some of them are the
Well, that's why I said there isn't 10.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just said that. Feel free to use the text, the actual passages of Scripture, I don't know, to help you along figuring out some of the realities that we're trying to graphically illustrate here. Just an idea. Yeah, you're like, 3 kids? 20 kids? I don't know, somewhere in there. No, this is different. This is different. Although when you're working with someone, you ask questions, but you have all the information you need.
Okay, Leah born
Leah
Lisa.
had
Okay, who do we start with Jacob and Leah?
Reuben.
Reuben. Who else?
Another
Levi.
son.
Before Levi. Simeon. And then
Levi.
And then
Judah.
we stop there because who do we go to next?
Rachel.
No.
Just kidding.
Because what's the problem with Rachel?
Can't have kids.
She can't have kids, and we'll kind of give this little asterisk to note that. Which, have we seen that problem before? Where have you seen that before, by the way?
Sarah and Hagar.
Similar situation up here, right? What did Sarah do when she couldn't have kids? What does Rachel do when she can't have kids?
Wasn't it supposed to go the other way?
I'm doing it this way right now because I'm doing it this way. So B-I-H.
And Naphtali.
All right, and they have 2 kids. That's right.
And Naphtali.
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 Never say die, Naphtali. All right, so that's numbers 5 and 6 boys.
Then Zilpah.
Leah, I think it was Zilpah.
Because what's Leah's issue?
She's got
Right, I mean, and there's obviously some conflict there. Well, you gave your hand servant. Well, I'm just going to give you my hand servant then. Named,
Yeah.
Gad. And Asher.
no, what's the name of the hand?
Zilpah.
Yeah. These are all names that we're going to be giving our children. Zilpah Matthew, Gad Matthew. It's going to be awesome. It's great. But they do have 2 kids named
Yeah.
Gad and Asher. Asher's actually kind of a cool name.
Yeah.
All right, so that's it, right?
Wait, no.
No, that isn't it.
Oh, there's a daughter.
There is a daughter.
Dinah.
And
Right?
I'm trying to remember where.
Before that is
Yeah, before Dinah comes
Ishtar.
Issachar, so another boy, and then
No, just kidding.
That's
Zebulun.
Zebulun, and then there's a Dinah. There's a girl, and that's it.
And then
No, then
Rachel
Benjamin.
has
or
Joseph.
Joseph.
And then Rachel has a Joseph and
Benjamin.
the favored one, son of my right hand. What a great name to have, Benjamin. Right? Amen. All right. Any realities?
Died.
And Rachel died. Yeah. Causing who some sorrow? Right. So much so that what does he now do towards his children?
Favors the two that originally.
Is this making sense? See all these wonderful lines everywhere? Obviously, when you do your geniogram, it will look so much neater than this. But given that I'm just writing this up within this course of this class, we don't have the time to get out a ruler and do it. But he favors these guys, right? So much so, specifically, who's this guy again? How do the other brothers feel towards him?
They, fate killed him.
Lots of angry lines.
I would definitely, I mean, at some point, you have to draw angry lines. And look, I'm not finished. I will give you angry lines, all right? All I'm trying to show is that it's everyone.
Was Benjamin?
Dinah, I don't know. It's a good question. We don't have any.
We know that they're all very protective of her.
Very protective of her. Definitely of Benjamin as well, because later in the story, when we hear that he requests Benjamin to come, and they're like, oh, and then he has to stay back. Oh, and obviously Jacob doesn't like that because he favors Joseph when he finds out Joseph is killed. Bring back a bloody coat. Obviously, he wants to hold on to Benjamin that much more and not let him go because he's the...
3 lines in between Jacob and Benjamin, so 2.
In a meshed relationship?
Kind of.
Um,
No, Jacob and Benjamin, not Joseph.
okay, maybe. We don't have any specific examples like what Rebecca did with Jacob, but we know they're at least close. We can say that much. Whether it was a meshed, maybe, but we don't have any specific examples like when Becky went out of her way to say, oh, give this to your father and put these on.
Because he didn't have, necessarily a good relationship with other sons doesn't mean that he had a mesh with
Not necessarily. Again, the reason I say this is a mesh is because Rebecca did specific things that were beyond the normal relationship of a mother-son, right? Give this, deceive your father, put on this hairy arm so you can deceive your father. I mean, that's kind of a little beyond what is normal for a mother and son relationship. We don't have any specific examples other than Jacob holding Benjamin out of a probably natural response. His other favorite son is killed, and his response is to keep his other favorite son. I'm not saying that's the healthiest thing in respect to his other kid, but it's based upon his love for Rachel over Leah, which is why he loves those 2 sons so much more, right? You're seeing that dynamic play itself out, that when he favors that one woman, the one that he worked 14 years to get with, it's understandable that he has a specific relationship, a favored nature relationship with those 2 sons, and then it's understandable why all of those other brothers hate Joseph so much, right? It's understandable. Is it excused? Is it justifiable? No, because we are very clear that you are not, but you are, someone say defective, affected. You're not determined. None of these people can say, well, I had to do this or I had to act like that way because previous generations did that. I had to hate my brother because my father liked him better than me, so I had to sell him into slavery and lie about his death. No, that's ridiculous. You guys are all personally, morally held accountable for your actions, but I can understand, not justify, understand why you might have some animosity towards Joseph because Jacob had a favored status with him based on his relationship with his wife and so on and so forth, all right? So, generally speaking, there's anything else in general that you'd want to put on here? Yeah.
I think it's kind of, isn't it Laban is the father of Leah and Rachel and the brother of Becky?
Yeah, Laban is, yeah, that is in here, right? So, and now their brother, they're not married. So you have Laban, who is the brother of Rebekah, but is the father, oh wow, this is getting ugly, of Leah and Rachel, all right? Yeah?
Would you want to put that Jacob and Esau were kind of estranged? I mean...
There was not just conflict, but at some point that. And later in the text, what do we find out?
That they do know.
Yeah, and again, remember when we're doing a genogram, we're looking at the current picture in reality. The text that we have in front of us is a progressive reality. So all of these, I understand why you'd put conflict, because that characterized their earlier relationship. There's distance, because at some point they're actually literally geographically in different places. But then eventually they did come back together, right? Jacob and Esau, from a distance, he sends his people up, tries to make a plea offering, and Esau forgives him. Generally speaking, again, with Laban and Jacob, would there be any?
A little bit of conflict, maybe.
Probably a little conflict there. Laban's responsibility is to get his firstborn married off, right? And so hence his trickery and his deception, and thus some of the hostilities. But Jacob, being persevering in his love for Rachel, continues on. But I'm sure there was a little negative feelings towards his father-in-law, i.e. his uncle. You understand these are biblical times, right? Okay. I know when we look at these family trees, we kind of think, okay, this is a little different, obviously. It's not quite the normative way that a family tree should look. I was about to do a southern redneck joke, but I'm just going to avoid it altogether at this point. The reality is, though, that these are biblical times, and we kind of understand there to be multi-relational aspects to these families, all right? Not normative for today, but understandable back then. And we can even go further back to Adam and Eve and their kids and how they kind of intermarried, and ask Mr. Iverson again if you want some of the ideas of the genetic rationale as to how that can happen without any of the possible mutations that go on within our current day and age of family intermarrying and things like that. So that's another whole discussion, but Mr. Iverson can help you with that. It is very cool. It's a very interesting look at that. But anything else? Any other observations? The lying was definitely one, not just with Abraham, Isaac, but Jacob as well. So that's another aspect that we can put on there. We mentioned the not being able to bear children aspect, so I'm going to give you my handmaid. It's another one, yeah.
Jacob's children lied too.
Yeah, continue to the fourth generation. What happened to our son? He died. An animal got him. In fact, here's his bloody coat. Really? No, what really happened? We wanted to make some money off him. It's too easy just to kill him off when we can make some money and sell him off, and he'd be out of our... So obviously this lying continues even to the fourth generation.
Rachel lies when she hides the idol underneath her.
Yeah. Definitely a concern on both sides, guys and girls. Yep.
Favoritism show.
A lot of favoritism, right? And to see how that favoritism impacts the dynamic of family. When Isaac favors Esau, and Becky has this kind of unhealthy favoritism towards Jacob, how it deals in their relationship. They're conflicted, they're estranged, they're getting back together. How it probably, we don't have in the text, but I'm sure it affected this relationship to a certain degree. Again, the favor of Jacob to his two sons, how it affects all of this. I mean, time and time again, you see the effects of certain attitudes and actions on successive generations. This is good. Any other observations?
Sarah hated Hagar when she had a kid, but
Mhm.
Leah and Rachel didn't seem to have a problem with it.
With their...
Bilhah and Zilpah having kids, like when they gave Jacob...
Oh, specifically because of these. Yeah, we don't have anything in the text, but very clearly Sarah despised, looked with unfavor towards Hagar, and the birth of Ishmael that much more.
It kind of seems like they got used to it, kind of.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Anything else you'd note? Observation? Yeah.
It's just interesting to look at what a huge mess it is, yet God totally worked through it.
And this is the great thing that I love looking at when I look at families. Again, that's why I love that phrase, because you may be affected, but you're not determined. And the breaker of it all is the grace of God. That even if you are affected, the reality is that the grace of God at any point can come into this equation and break any cycle. Can you think of anyone specifically in the fourth generation that by the grace of God broke those cycles? Joseph is a perfect example of that. He had the power and the ability to put his brothers into place. Talk about animosity. You don't like me? You sold me into slavery? Well, watch this. I'm going to show you what pain really is all about, right? And he not only has opportunity and power, but you could almost make the justification that he had the right to. But obviously he realizes by the grace of God he doesn't do it. Thank God he doesn't do it. And he shows this incredible mercy and grace because he realized how much has been given to him. He breaks the cycle of how his family has been affected by using the grace of God. And that, to me, is exactly what we want to do when we're working with people. That, yeah, you may be affected, but you're not determined, especially when you take in the supernatural equation of God. And that's what we're trying to do, right? This is one technique of trying to help that. Now, I tried in some ways to kind of show you what some of those realities look like, and you guys got most of it in terms of the people. The biological relationships is always where we start, right? So husbands, wives, children, uncles, aunts, and a lot of those other realities. What I tried to do, and again, it's going to be looking different because it's not just a science, it's a bit of an art. What I tried to do was impose then the relational relationships and dynamics. Something like that, all right? A couple of things that you already mentioned. If you remember this one, the wives giving handmaids to husbands. And what I tried to do, you can see I tried to highlight them by using just some kind of graphic, some type of legend that then I explain what the different symbols mean. Husbands listening to their wives a number of times. And again, understand that just because the wife offers their handmaiden doesn't mean the husband has to listen. But they continue to give it. And understandably, if a wife says, here, take and have relationships with my handmaiden, obviously, a guy, given the urges that he has, is going to give into it, but he doesn't have to, though. The reason I put in brackets there, Adam in the garden with Eve, because this problem of husbands listening to their wives to do the wrong thing started all the way back in the garden. That's way up here, right? If you continue the genogram for this family. There's a wonderful book out by Dr. Larry Crabb called The Silence of Adam. If you ever get a chance to get it on your shelves, I highly recommend it. In his book, he may take a little bit of a theological stretch, but I don't think it's too far from the truth, that when you read the text in Genesis, it says that Eve took of the fruit and ate, and did what? And gave to her husband. There's no indication that she had to go running, calling, finding him, but simply she ate it and gave it to him. The implication is that Adam was there and did nothing to stop or to prevent himself from engaging into it. That he stood there silent and did not enact his responsibility as the head of that household. The reason why I think it's a valid concern is because when you look at the New Testament, Paul squarely puts the responsibility of sin entering into the human race on who? On the first Adam. Thankfully, a second Adam comes into the equation by the name of, Sunday school answer always works. Yeah, all right? Where the first Adam fails, the second Adam responds and restores. But it's through the silence of that first Adam. By the way, can I tell you, most of the marriage counseling that I've done, whenever there's a major conflict between a husband and a wife, two realities are often present. One, the guy is not engaging enough. He's very passive, he's very laid back, does not engage into his responsibility as a husband or father. There's a second reality. If the husband is lacking his responsibility, what do you think the wife is doing? Taking too much over. It's kind of like this equation where if he does too little, she tries to overcompensate. So what does he do even more then? Does even less to what she does even more. And you're seeing this growing discrepancy. So one of the best ways that I can intervene into marriages is, one, help the wife stop thinking she has to do everything and thus put guilt and shame on him for not doing it. But even more important in my estimation, because I hold a very strong complementarian view of the roles of men and women in the household, I need to encourage the man to be a man, to step up to the responsibilities of what it means to be a husband and or father within his family, to take the lead and the responsibility spiritually, emotionally, in terms of the physical needs, whatever it is. I tell guys, step up, be a man. Look what happens when you don't, right? And again, we're not saying because they didn't stop it that all these things had to happen. No, they made their choices. But I do think it to be interesting when you see when a man doesn't step up and take the role and responsibility that God has given to him, a lot of bad things can flow from that. And that's something that I think is helpful to point out. Lying to get their way. We talked about that one already, a number of times where we see that. Conflict between wives. Which one was that? It was, don't have it on this one. Oh, there it is. Right there. Barrenness was a cause for, especially in Old Testament times, was a cause for a lot of embarrassment and shame. And so that was a reason why these handmaids were given over a number of times. This one I thought was interesting. Something given for food. Birthrights are sold. Status. I mean, a number of times where you see these instances where something is sold for something else, usually with food indicated, that some type of physical desire. Oh, I would do anything for that meal. Really? How about your birthright? And this actually happened a couple of times within this family as well. If you note what I did on here, or what I tried to do as well, was give an indication, not just of the biological, not just of the relational, but I tried to explain some of the other aspects, the observations. The way I did that, generally speaking, was through the use of those little symbols, and I put a legend in the bottom as well to help do that. Please know that I am totally okay with you guys doing this as well. As you make observations in your families, as you start noting some certain progressive realizations, there are some realities. What I did on the next page is I tried to give the specific biblical examples of where I found some of those patterns so as to give highlight into where we can see some of those things, explaining that out a little. Yes, sir? Do we have an extra one? I always try to make 11 copies. Does anyone have an extra one? Yeah, here it is. I was using it. Thanks. All right. So generally speaking, this is what we're trying to do. This is what I'm wanting you to do as well in your genogram. So understand it's both a science and an art. You have the packet, which are the basic outlines of how to draw men, women, relationships, conflicts, biological realities. But know that you're not bound to them, all right? I'm okay with you taking a little flexibility, using legends, symbols to help better explain some of the realities in your family as well, should they be significant. That's why I give you the whole semester as well. Start talking to your family. Start getting the information you need so as to pull the content together. Ask me questions. You have the whole semester. Please don't come up to me, by second week of December with all your questions. Can I do this? Can I do that? I'm giving you the whole semester. So if you have questions throughout the semester, please ask me. I'm more than happy to help you figure out how to do this, all right? And you have the rubric in your syllabus as to how I will specifically be grading your genogram as well, all right? Any questions? Any other general thoughts or observations about genograms in general, or what we're more intentionally, this is the technique of a theory, okay? The technique is genogram. The theory is what we refer to as family of origin, FOO, all right? And what we're trying to say is that while we're willing, again, to use that, okay, I'm just not going to draw, I'm just going to reference this, the technique of genograms based on the theory of family of origin, ultimately it's only usable because it goes through our theology, that we believe that there is a rationale for understanding families, the dynamics they have, to help people get beyond the realities of their family. That's essentially what we can highlight through Scripture itself. All right? Questions? Comments? Yeah.
I thought it was interesting that we identified that Joseph was the one who kind of broke the chain.
Yeah.
Because I don't know, a couple of years ago or something, I was talking to a friend of mine, and a family was encouraging her to be a Joseph in her family and
Right.
break the chain kind of thing. And I was like, I've never heard of that
Yeah.
before. And then we're
Now you're talking about it now. That's a great point. And please realize, I don't want to negate some of the other realities of faith in some of these other people. Understand, you read in the New Testament, all these people are mentioned as heroes of the faith, because there are aspects in all of their lives that we can look to as exemplary, as good. So I don't want to paint this big, broad stroke of saying they're all bad till we get to Joseph. Hey, he's wonderful, he's great. But we do see some of the concerns, and that much more it highlights the joy of Joseph, right? When we see he did not continue on some of these practices of many generations. Thank God. And how, like you said, we can encourage that. That's a great phrase. Be a Joseph, right? You're not determined by your family. You, by the grace of God, can break those cycles. You're not determined. You are affected, but now take the grace of God and go beyond it. That's a great bit of hope for a lot of people who struggle with a lot of family issues. All right?